I heard that music before I was even born. I might have heard that music when I was still inside of my mom. And it is the root to the blues, it is the root to ragtime, it is the root to swing, it is the roots of bebop, and it's the root to what would go on to be called rhythm and blues or R&B. That music still is influential to this day. It made its way into the consciousness of jazz musicians in the 1950s. And what they did was they incorporated that. When you got people from the church listening to jazz, you actually accomplished that thing of communication. You know, when you get church people to listen to jazz, you have really done a great job communicating. So you will hear elements of the black church in this song by the great drummer Art Blakey. Well, actually, it's written by Bobby Timmons in Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers. There was something called Call and Response. Really quickly, the preacher would be up teaching Christianity, and then he would say this, yeah, and they would go, yeah. And he would say, Jesus is the Messiah. And they would go, yeah. And that was called Call and Response. And you will hear some of that in this piece of music made popular by Art Blakey, written by Bobby Timmons. And it's called Moaning. You want to tell them what moaning means? You know what it is to moan?
声音，我有讲对吗？声音，就是一个这样子。
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Jazz Messengers。那早期的时候 ，Horace Silver 也是这个团的开发，就是团长之一。他们两个就是算是 Hard Bop 这个很重要的、最重要的人物。Hard Bop 这个刚才 Bobby 的那一段好像还没翻到，就是一样像 Cool Jazz 这样子，是 Bebop 的一个进化版，但是更加的简单。然后刚才你也有提到，跟爵士乐手慢慢的重新寻找他们非洲的根源，他们就把这个那时候的那个非洲的灵性跟一些基础，像蓝调啊，还有刚刚我们讲的那种 gospel 的那种情绪带进这个音乐，然后就可以想象到，大家可以去搜寻一下 Jazz Messengers 这个团，然后 Art Blakey 的不只是整个音乐的那个简单，节奏组方面也比较注重 groove 这方面，就是说 Art Blakey 是个很大声的鼓手，你如果看他打鼓，你会看到他就是很大声，非常大声，可是那个 groove 就非常的 powerful。groove 中文怎么说？律动，但是好像我一直觉得这个词也是怪怪的。groove 就连英文也很难解说，所以翻到中文好像也很难，反正就很难解释，就是想要让人跳舞，想要让人跟着摆动。那我觉得 Hard Bop 从一个鼓手的观点来看 ，Hard Bop 最 defining 的 trait 就是这个。I was understanding them from the drummer's perspective. You know, because Blakey is such a powerful. Yeah, the groove is like.
Yeah, there's looking for the one, and the one is always there.
Yeah, it's 很清楚、很简单，然后但是很 powerful.
One's always there.
Yes. You want to try another?
Yeah. Well.
I think let's choose between Coltrane. Take the Coltrane and Sidewinder.
Okay.
Sidewinder.
All right. The Hard Bop had did something for jazz musicians that hadn't been done before. They were actually making money. You know, they were actually selling enough records to actually be kind of wealthy, because this music made its way into house parties. And that was the last place you would find jazz at. Just 5 years earlier, jazz was the music of intellects. Jazz was the music of highly cultured people who were progressive in their thinking and in the way that they lived. Soon enough, you had jazz music in like house parties, fish fries, and people were doing popular dances of the day, like the twist. Some of you might remember, maybe your parents have told you about a dance long ago called the twist. Oh, I feel really old. Yeah, oh, thank you, of course, no, but you must have heard from your parents. No, they were actually, that's when you made money, when you're playing your music at house parties. And it started off with Lou Donaldson, Cannonball Adderley, the Three Sounds, Gene Harris, these kind of guys, Jimmy Forrest, Honky Tonk. Oh. I know you've never heard that song before in your life, but that gives you an idea of what happened to jazz musicians. They didn't sell out. They just started to make money, and they realized that for a fraction of their effort, for a fraction of their intellect, they got 10 times as much as they were getting when they played bebop. Never made more obvious until the arrival of, I consider one of the greatest musicians of the previous century. He continues to thrive and live and be a great example of what we're talking about. I think he's one of the most influential musicians from the previous century, Herbie Hancock. Sometimes they call him Herbie, I came to get paid, Hancock. Because he did that in 1962 at Blue Note Records, where they had the best contracts out for the contemporary jazz musicians of the time. So when Herbie did that, that song ended up on pop radio. It ended up on the top of the pop charts, top of the R&B charts. You saw it on TV commercials. They were just, I mean, Herbie arrived at Blue Note 1 year after that song. He was rich, buying Ferraris, and so Blue Note says, Lee Morgan, you should do that too if you want to get paid. As a matter of fact, we insist you do that or you no longer have a contract. And they did that with a lot of the musicians at Blue Note and all the other jazz labels at the time. Use a fraction of your intellect. You don't even break a sweat. Don't work too hard. And then you can get paid. And so they approached the great trumpeter Lee Morgan, who was like one of the greatest. And Terry and I were talking about earlier, the head of Blue Note was saying, okay, you got a session next week, right? I know what you're planning on doing, but we need one of those, make sure you do one of those. And then, of course, Lee quickly forgot all about that, and they went and did that great record. I forget which record Side One was on. You remember, Terry? It was just a great record. And the session was just about over, and everybody was packing their stuff up, but then the president of Blue Note shows up. He was a German guy, Alfred Lion. And he says, oh, you guys are finished? Yeah. But where's Lee? Lee was in the bathroom. He says, did you guys give me that, And then Lee, so the story went that Lee wrote this in the bathroom in 15 minutes. And it was like one of the biggest hit records he ever had, and one of the biggest hit records in all of jazz history. I've heard it all my life that he wrote it in the bathroom listening to the guy up there. He said, damn, I forgot all about that. And so this is a great song he did called Side One. You and I, Jack? 2, 1.
Bartender 就是其实就像 Bobby 讲的，是回应 Herbie Hancock 是一个现在还活着的一个，就是算是大师级的人物。那他当年写了一首 Watermelon Man， 就是赚翻天了，就是赚翻了，真的赚很多钱。所以 Bobby 刚才在说那个 Lee Morgan 就是一直被强迫，你要不要写像类似这样的歌，赚一点钱？所以他好像是在厕所里面，最后15分钟赶快写出来，然后就是这首 Sidewinder 的歌曲。
Once again, they use it in movies. It was on TV commercials. It was like radio jingles. It was like they use it in movies and that whole thing. Apparently, he wrote the song in 15 minutes in his while using the bathroom, and he made more money off of that than he ever did in his entire career.
Yeah, so, 所以 hard bop 大家大概有个印象，就像吃那个。叫地瓜圆、芋圆、芋头这种很扎实啊，这是很简单，但是很 groove 很简单，很让人想要跳舞的一种东西，一个音乐风格。
Amazingly, this period saw the emergence of John Coltrane. I'm sure all of you know. He's probably considered to be one of the most important jazz figures. Since Charlie Parker, in that nobody was going to ask John Coltrane to do that because he was somewhere else during this time, at the beginnings of something that would go on to be called spiritual jazz. In that, nobody was accusing them of selling out. I don't think the term was around then to be a sellout. But John Coltrane managed to have a recording contract that was just as great as Herbie Lee Morgan, but Bob Field and Impulse allowed him to play the music of his mind, the music of his heart, and John Coltrane was a deep explorer of the human psyche and the human soul, and it made him a great explorer of how far he could take this music that we all call jazz music. He was allowed to do that, and he was allowed to do it in a way that he did not have to compromise. Yeah, Lee, he had to compromise himself. That's why he wrote it in the bathroom. But Bob Field gave Train probably the best contract at the time for John Coltrane to do the music of his mind. As we know, he was a great spiritualist. He was a great explorer of the human spirit, and he was a great explorer of music. And he had proven that when he gave us the legendary Giant Step. But during this time, Train was into going deep inside himself to find, probably he was trying to find out the meaning of life. And he was allowed to compose on a platform such as this. It was unheard of at the time. It was unprecedented. But he was paid very well to produce the music of his mind. And the best example of that is, once again, one of the first songs my Uncle Nate taught me how to play on the piano. It's a song called Equinox.
John Coltrane 的 Equinox， 所以我们慢慢接到后面，这个已经是快要60年代，今年60年代的时候，就是他们所谓的 Post Bop， 就是说这个词其实很笼统，因为其实那个时候音乐已经经过了很多不同的变化。像 Bobby 讲的 Coltrane 的那个声音就是比较 spiritual 的，他在寻找某个东西，我不知道他后面有没有找到，但他一生都在尝试不同的东西。那他的声音就是像这样的一个很红、很大、非常的很 spiritual、很 deep 的一个声音。然后这个时期我也要提一下，因为在那之前，一直在 Post Bop 之前，鼓手一直是一个很背景、很 background 的一个角色。我们是伴奏，帮他们伴奏。可是到了 Post Bop 有2个很重要的鼓手，我觉得值得一提，一个是 Elvin Jones， 另外一个是 Tony Williams。这2个，我觉得 Post Bop 这个 genre 除了 Miles Davis 跟 Coltrane 这些大咖之外，这2个鼓手的角色也很重要。因为现在就像比如说你现在点一个东西，反正点一个，突然间丢一个东西反进去，点一个豆花，到底谁才是主角？是豆花是主角，还是粉圆是主角？其实很难说嘛，对不对？因为到了这个时候，鼓手算是这个音乐里面一个很重要的角色，他们也扮演着一个往前台，然后他们 influence 这个音乐怎么进行这样子。I was just saying about Elvin and Tony, about
Yeah.
how they step to the forefront.
Yeah.
And they were part of the music, or become a big part of
Yeah.
Coltrane and Davis.
The thing about jazz music is very progressive, and in the words of Miles Davis, the music can not just become a museum piece. I think that all art should be progressive. You know, just can't stay the same all the time. And then what happened after the successes of post-bop, post-bop, hard bop, post-bop, postmodern, was an effort to go with the times. And at the time, at the late 1950s, John Coltrane devised a composition called Giant Steps, which there was nothing like it before it. There was just nothing like what John Coltrane came up with when he devised Giant Steps. But it certainly showed the world that the music was moving forward. Okay, we went from bebop to cool jazz to hard bop, where we made some money. There came a time in the late 50s where that wasn't so important anymore to certain people. That shouldn't have anything to do with art. If you're doing hard bop, it's not progressive, so it can't be art. It's, you know, it's a music business, and you got jazz musicians who are on the pop charts. All that's fine, but it doesn't have anything to do with one of the main characteristics of art, and that is it has to always progress. It has to always move and go somewhere. Not just anywhere, but take you to a place that any artist wants to take you to a place that you haven't been before. But at the same time, you will derive great pleasure and even enlightenment if you were to go through. That's what happened when Miles did Kind of Blue. He just got rid of all of the chord changes and just decided that less is better. All of a sudden, people were listening to that, and people were buying Kind of Blue who had never bought jazz in their lives. I know some people who bought that record and never bought any other jazz after that. You have any jazz records? Oh, I have Kind of Blue. Anything else? No, is there something else? It was just that popular. The great musical thinker, Ornette Coleman, had an earth-shaking new band that were doing music that they would call free jazz. It was quite contemporary, and the call of the day was words like avant-garde, exploratory. This is art music, and it's not for everyone. I think it was Schoenberg who said, if it's for everyone, it's not art. You know, if it's true art, everyone can't like it. And that was certainly the case with Ornette Coleman, because he devised a group in my home of Los Angeles with Billy Higgins, Charlie Hayden, a guy named Don Cherry. And they got ran out of LA. Get out! Fortunately, they went to New York City, and that began a movement that some call free jazz. It's very difficult music to acclimate yourself with. It's very uncompromising. I'll tell you how uncompromising it was. There was no piano. Didn't need a piano. The statements that Ornette Coleman wanted to make did not include a piano. What made it easier were, there were no chords. There were no chords to be sounded anyway. And there was a fancy word that came from Ornette called harmolodic, which meant that the harmony is horizontal, not vertical like a chord. This is vertical because you stack one note on top of each other. But with Ornette, they didn't need a piano because the harmony is in the line. So it was a bunch of compositions with lines. And it was very, very uncompromising. And that was a good thing if you were a black musician in the United States in 1959. It was, you had a lot of things to be concerned with. And it was a time that everybody was searching. And Ornette Coleman was one of the bravest musicians to have ever played this music. Because quite literally, I mean, I'm serious, he was made to leave Los Angeles. People were attacking the band on stage. The music was just that uncompromised. Of course, he went to New York, and long story long, he became a symbol for this new music that some call postmodern, some call avant-garde, any other thing. And Miles Davis, well, everybody was influenced by it. Even successful musicians like Miles and Herbie Hancock were influenced by this brave statement. You had to admire a man who says, I don't care about making money. I don't care if you like it or not. I know they're not going to play this on the radio. That's not important. It was art music, and it was highly influential, and it did reach jazz symbols like Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock. Herbie had come to Blue Note and then really wrote these pop tunes. There's a word I don't really like to use, but they call it soul jazz. And that's what Watermelon Man and Cantaloupe Island were. A young musician, a young drummer named Tony Williams said, man, Herbie, you done made all the money, man. Would you come back to art? You can get paid doing, you can afford it more than anyone else. And you're highly capable because Miles wanted you to join his band. Herbie was busy at Blue Note, making a lot of money and buying Ferraris. But Tony Williams was successful in getting the president of Blue Note Records to share Herbie Hancock with Columbia Records, where Miles was. It was an extraordinary thing. I don't think anything like that has been done since. You're talking about two record labels who were actually rivals. And Herbie was able to record for the two most important jazz labels at the same time. That's why he looks so good to be 80. He's been rich for a long time. And once he got into Miles's group with the great Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and Wayne Shorter, it was music that, to this day, hasn't been equal. And it's the music that that shocks and intrigue you 50 years after they were recorded. And it greatly influenced Herbie Hancock to where after Herbie worked with Miles, he was never the same. No more Watermelon songs, you know, no more soul jazz stuff. It actually opened up Herbie's mind, and he almost was like reborn as an artist. And we have an example of that in his composition called One Finger Snap off of the record Empyrean Islands.
one full round, and then it gets complicated again. Is that
Well,
fair to say that?
It all depends on what you would call complicated.
Yeah.
Goes both ways.
Everybody has a different idea of what's complicated. You know? What's complicated to you might not be complicated to Terry. What is complicated anyway?
I think in some ways, from a drummer's perspective, the music gets harder to understand again.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that I understand.
我在说那个，从 bebop 开始，就是 cool j hard bop 这样发展到 post bop because it's more art,
Yeah.
becomes art music， 变成再回来变成什么艺术的一种音乐，就是他们那个时候 post bop 和弦变比较简单，但是因为节奏组的加入，就是他们也往前站出来，就变成节奏上变得更复杂。对我来讲是这样，因为我听 Elvin 跟 Tony， 如果你去听后期的 Mouse 跟 Coltrane， 他们那个是很多东西变回就是很多，就像很多材料在里面这样，就是真的是 ，Yeah。
I haven't heard Andrew speak this much Chinese in a long time. And as I was listening to him, I don't understand a word, but it's beautiful to me. You know, do you have to understand it for it to be beautiful to you? Is there such a thing as music that's not going to ask you to understand it? Maybe you can find beauty without totally understanding something. Like I say, listen to him speak Chinese, I forget he is a Taiwanese. And I was just reminded how beautiful it sounds. When I first went to the Middle East 25, 30 years ago almost, I had, it was like a 30-hour flight or something ridiculous like that, 21-hour flight. And by the time we got to this little place called Bahrain, it's in the Persian Gulf, off the coast of Saudi Arabia and Iran. And by the time we got through with that long flight, I didn't realize how hot it could get on planet Earth. It was just as hot as you could imagine. And they finally gave me the key to my hotel room, and I'd never seen anything more beautiful because I got this key, I'm gonna give me a shower. And it was so hot in there, and then I turned the air conditioning on, it was too damn cold. So what I decided was, turn the air conditioning on, and then open the window, where it was still like 35 degrees at midnight. But with the window open and the warm breeze from outside, and the air conditioning, I fell asleep. And then something awakened me. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. And it took me about 3 minutes for me to realize that I wasn't dreaming. It was like, there was this prayer that they have coming from this minaret. If you ever go to the Middle East, they have great big speakers. You know, they have these big old speakers. And at first, it scared the hell out of me. Because I'd never heard anything like that in my life. And then I understood that it was a call to prayer at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I still don't understand the language, yet it's one of the most beautiful sounds I've ever heard. So it's not so important for you to understand all music to be able to appreciate the beauty in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, 感谢大家今天来听我们的 presentation. Should we call it up for questions? Yeah.
Sure, I would love that.
有没有什么问题？就是想要问 Bobby 或者李燕或玉佳或开放一下大家。
Someone must ask a question, otherwise we didn't do a good job today.
那换我问大家。
那今天可能没有办法讲那么多，但是就是一个解答，一个很简单的解答，就是柜台里面有卖我跟 Andrew 穿鞋。对，那都是大概都是其实就是2010到2015这段时间，那就是这10年，这10年其实是台湾的爵士乐就是进展或是就是爆发的最丰盛的10年。那有非常非常多很精彩的作品，就是因为像我们今天做的事情，就是我们是一个有点像是回顾这个音乐的历史，那或者是说就是当其实一般来说爵士乐手在就是开始学习这个音乐、接触这个音乐的时候，也都是做这样的事情。那其实因为太多东西，太就是怎么讲，这个历史虽然才100年，可是非常非常的就是丰富，那非常非常多很棒的东西值得学习。那所以很多时候其实蛮多人就是会一头栽进去，然后忘记其实你自己是什么样子，或者是说就是在那个是一个怎么讲，就是一个比较前段的时候，你必须是先从模仿、先从学习开始，那你后来才慢慢的会就是找到自己的样子、自己的声音。那其实有自己作品的爵士音乐家，或者是像我们今天听到的、演奏到的这些作品，然后提到这些名字，他们都是一样，就是他们有非常就是花很多时间研究他们之前的音乐家做的事情，然后他们也有他们自己的作品，他们代表性的音乐，他们的演奏方式。所以其实就是爵士乐是一个现在进行时，它就是不管是现在在世界的各处，不管是在纽约也好，美国或者是欧洲，或者是日本、中东亚洲、台湾，那不管是什么样的人，就是有白人、黑人，然后黄人，或者是不知道火星人，也许他们也有爵士乐，就是各式各样的文化背景的人，他们都有他们自己的爵士乐，然后所有的东西一切都是在 happening 啊。对，那即便是我们今天提到的这些各种不同的爵士乐的风格，就是即便是最早时期的那种 ragtime 或者是 New Orleans Jazz still exists。然后对，就是所有的风格、所有的 style， 并没有一个东西就消失不见这样，他们都还是继续的存在，继续有人在用这样子的概念、这样子的方法在创作他们自己的音乐。对，所以就是除了就是今天的这样的演出，当然也非常的就是欢迎大家就继续的，就是继续的想办法，就是譬如说关注想象，然后或是关注各个其他就是在台湾的各个就是爵士乐的 live house club， 对，然后现在台湾有非常多的，就是比如说这种小型演出空间也好，或者是音乐节，像前阵子刚结束台北爵士音乐节，然后也有很多就是各式各样的活动，里面都会有爵士乐，然后唱片、专辑啊，或者是如果你没有钱买实体专辑的话，你也可以就是上网去就是听那些 Spotify 或者 Apple Music， 就是你可以找到非常非常多台湾的爵士乐的声音，然后有人在做像这样子，就是回顾历史，然后演奏经典，然后也有人是在做很多自己的东西，创作自己的东西，新的东西。那这一切加起来，就是爵士乐就是这个。那如果你今天买 CD 的话，可以帮你签。
I can understand it. Sounded beautiful.
Yeah. 我要工商一下，下礼拜我们会讲是前面的部分，所以 Bobby 刚才讲的什么 ragtime 啊 ，traditional jazz 啊，我们下礼拜会讲，然后下礼拜应该也会讲一些，我觉得我们应该会讲这个东西怎么成型的，就是鼓为什么是这样打，贝为什么是这样，大概会讲一些这些细节。好，那我们就再一次介绍一下乐手啊。Bobby West on piano.
Thank you.
谢谢萨克斯风。谢谢刘玉佳。现在演奏多一首歌，Take the Coltrane.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we're doing.
It's good to end on the music.
One, two, three.
谢。